ब्रह्माणं विदधाति पूर्वं यो वै वेदांश्च प्रहिणोति तस्मै तम्हदेवम् आत्मबुद्धिप्रकाशं मुमुक्षुर्वै शरणमहं प्रपद्ये निष्कलं निष्क्रियं शान्तं निरवद्यं निरञ्जनम् अमृतस्य परं सेतुं दग्धेन्धनमिवानलम् ॐ असतो मा सद्गमय तमसो मा ज्योतिर्गमय मृत्योर्मा अमृतं गमय आविराविर्मयेधि रुद्रयत्ते दक्षिणं मुखं तेन मां पाहि नित्यम् ॐ शान्तिः 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 ॐ शक्तिसमुद्रसमुत्थतरङ्गं दर्शितप्रेमविजृम्भितरङ्गं संशयराक्षसनाशमहास्त्रं यामि गुरुं शरणं भववैद्यम् अद्वैतत्त्वसमाहितचित्तं प्रोज्ज्वलभक्तिपटावृतवृत्तं कर्मकलेवरमद्भुतचेष्टं यामि गुरुं शरणं भववैद्यं नरदेव देव जय जय नरदेव. My respectful pranams to all the senior monks, the brahmacharyans and the devotees and the entire Ramakrishna Sangha. On this occasion I remember a very important and interesting statement made by Swami Vireshwaranandaji Maharaj of revered memory in December 1980 at the inauguration of the second convention of the Ramakrishna Mutt and the Ramakrishna Mission. We all know the first convention was convened by Swami Sharadanandaji himself when Swami Shivanandaji Mahapurush Maharaj was the president in 1926. After 54 years, the second convention was convened and the time has come perhaps for the third convention. On that occasion, Swami Vireshwarananda, in his inaugural address, he said, I bless all of you as the president of this order individually as carrying Sri Ramakrishna in your heart, and collectively as the Ramakrishna Sangha, I bow down to all of you. This is a very remarkable statement because individually every one of us carries Sri Ramakrishna in his or her heart, and collectively we form the Ramakrishna Sangha, which is the body of Sri Ramakrishna, as just now mentioned by the revered Swami Suviranandaji Maharaj. And Swami Vireshwarananda Maharaj also said, by Ramakrishna Sangha, I do not mean only the sannyasins who form the core group, but all the devotees, household devotees, and anybody who is trying to implement and actualize the immortal, eternal teachings of Sri Ramakrishna as interpreted by Swami Vivekananda, Sharada Devi and his brother disciples, and flowing in this Ramakrishna Parampara. Sampradaya or Parampara is an important concept in Hindu Sanatana Dharma, and Swami Vivekananda was in two minds when he started the Sangha. It is said that he was pacing back and forth and soliloquizing to himself, should I start a Sangha or should I not? If a Sangha is started, the infinite ideas of Sri Ramakrishna will be narrowed down. There's a likelihood of the Sangha becoming a sectarian phenomenon. And if I do not start a Sangha, there will not be a nucleus from which the ideas will spread. Ultimately, he had to, because of the divine will of Sri Ramakrishna, who will say that I do not know anything, Amiki Tani Jogadamba Kuriyechi. Divine will of the Divine Mother who wanted a sampradaya in the name of Sri Ramakrishna, who, as Swamiji told Nivedita, was an incarnation of Kali. Swami Vivekananda told Nivedita Will the future of mankind call Sri Ramakrishna the incarnation of Kali? Doubtless, she used his pure body and mind for her own ends. So we believe that Sri Ramakrishna, who embodied the divine Shakti, Shakti Samudra Samudra Tarangam, as Swami Vivekananda wrote in his famous hymn, and he started the Sangha. You know the famous incident when he gave Girwa cloths, ochre robes, to his chosen disciples at Kashipur, and that was the beginning of the Ramakrishna Sangha. And Swami Vivekananda tried to solve the problem of sectarianism, as he himself writes, by creating what he called a non-sectarian sect, which means it will have all the components of a sect, but it will be extremely liberal and avoid the fanaticism of the sect. In a famous letter to Kidi, Manikaswami Mudaliyar, he wrote, Jnana is all right, but it may end up with dry intellectualism. Bhakti is wonderful and grand, but it may become sentimentalism. A harmony of all these is required, and Ramakrishna was such a harmony. But such people are few and far between, but keeping him as the ideal, we can move on. We can effect this by coming together, by interacting, harmonizing, equipoising and fulfilling one another. This will be a harmony of a number of persons and a decided advance over other creeds. This was the entire conception of Swami Vivekananda, based on Sri Ramakrishna's thoughts on collective harmony of a large number of persons. And Swami Vivekananda repeatedly emphasized that the harmony of the four yogas, Jnana Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, Karma Yoga and Raja Yoga, together practiced collectively in the Ramakrishna Sangha, is the ideal of the present age. And he said, all of us may not individually attain to this ideal, but we can approximate to this ideal collectively by coming together, as we said, by harmonizing, interacting, equipoising and fulfilling one another. And he also wrote in his rules book, famous rules book, the very first rule, why was this Sangha established? In Bengali he wrote this, he dictated this and Swami Shuddhanandaji noted down, Sri Bhagavan Ramakrishna Pradarshita Pranali Avalamban Kuriya Nijer Mukti Sadhan Evang Samasta Jagater Sarva Prakar Kalyan Sadhane Shikhita Hovar Jonno Ei Mott Pratisthita Hoiyache. Every word is important. Nijer Mukti Sadhan Atmano Moksha Samasta Jagater Sarva Prakar Kalyan Jagat Hita. And to be able to be trained in doing good to others as well as individually to improve oneself. And he also said, such a remarkable harmony of that which is intensest, deep, at the same time broad as the skies. Deep as the ocean and broad as the skies, as he wrote in the rules book. Such a personality like Ramakrishna has never before appeared on the human earth. And we also should strive to integrate all these yogas in our life. And he said, Sri Ramakrishna has created the mold, and we have to cast ourselves in this mold, as was just now mentioned. And he said, a person who shows deficiency in any one of these yogas has not cast himself in the mold of Sri Ramakrishna. Jekono akti yoge nyunata je pradarshan kore Ramakrishna Mushai ekhono druto hoy nai. Swami Vivekananda was very, very clear in his mind that Sri Ramakrishna is the ideal, he is the goal, he is the way, and he is the purpose of this entire Sangha. As long as we remain true to this ideal by harmonizing the four yogas. The entire message of the Ramakrishna mission and the Ramakrishna Mutt, Swami Vivekananda gave in just a beautiful picture which arose in the mind of this great Rishi in a moment of artistic and spiritual genius. That is the emblem of the Ramakrishna mission, on which all of us on this sacred day should meditate and try to find out the meaning. Swami Vivekananda himself wrote, the rising sun is symbolic of jnana, the lotus symbolic of bhakti, and the wavy waters are symbolic of karma, and the encircling serpent, the Kundalini Shakti, is symbolic of yoga. And the swan in the picture represents the Paramatman. And the meaning of this picture is, by a combination of jnana, bhakti, karma and yoga, the vision of the Paramatman is obtained. And he gave to everybody that famous mantra in the Mahanarayana Upanishad, which sannyasins alone receive in the Sanatana Dharma. That he gave it to everybody, Tanno Hamsa Prachodayat. Hamsa here means the Paramahamsa, the Supreme Being, the Paramatman, and may that Supreme Being, the Paramahamsa, which is represented by Sri Ramakrishna, may that be our inspiration. Tanno Hamsa Prachodayat. And who was Sri Ramakrishna? According to Swami Vivekananda, he is not the person who was born in Kashipur, who did sadhanas and attained siddhi in Dakshineshwar and attained Mahasamadhi in Kashipur, born in Kamarpakur, did sadhana in Dakshineshwar and attained Mahasamadhi in Kashipur. That was only the physical form of Ramakrishna, which is external. But the real Ramakrishna is infinite and the absolute, as he himself told Swami Yogananda. Yogananda raised a voice of protest on this very day, 1st of May, 1897. He said, I don't understand why you are starting all these problems. Sri Ramakrishna taught us to do sadhana, taught us to get absorbed in God. In fact, he said, you pray to God to reduce your work. There's a confusion even now many people have. But Swami Vivekananda did not ask us to do karma. He asked us to do karma yoga for the realization of the self. Swami Shankarananda ji, in his monks' conference address in 1958, 60, 61, he said, Swami Vivekananda did not emphasize karma, but he emphasized the karma yoga for a realization of the Atman within, which is identical with the Supreme Self, the Paramatman or Bhagavan or Ishvara. So that confusion remains. Swami Yogananda raised his voice. He clarified for us. Swami Vivekananda thundered, Tini Ananta Bhavamaya Thakur. This is a very famous phrase on which we should meditate. Ananta Bhavamaya Thakur, Take তোমরা কিন্তু ছোট্ট গণ্ডির মধ্যে যদি আবদ্ধ রাখতে চাও, গণ্ডিটা ভেঙে সর্বত্র আমি কিন্তু তাকে ছড়াবো। তোমরা মনে করছো তোমরা ঠাকুরকে বুঝেছো, বুঝি? That means he is infinite and the absolute. I will just quote 2 lines from the most famous Aratrika hymn, which describes Sri Ramakrishna completely and totally as far as we believe. Swami Vivekananda himself wrote this. Niranjana Nara Rupadhara Nirguna Gunamaya. He is Niranjana without any form or name, but still he is Nara Rupadhara, human form. Nirguna, he is beyond all gunas. Gunamaya is Gunashraya and is full of gunas. Bhasvara, Bhava Sagara, Chira Unmada, Prema Pathar. These are sentences on which we should meditate day after day. Is Bhasvara, luminous. Bhava Sagara, he is the ocean of infinite spiritual moods and sentiments. Chira Unmada, intoxicated always. Prema Pathar, he is the ocean of unbounded mercy and prema. At the same time, he is Bhaktarjana Jugala Charana. He is come and his Jugala Charana, his blessed feet will take us beyond this samsara. I will end with a statement which is made by M. Master Maharshi, the record of the Gospel, repeatedly. It is not per se in the Kathamrita, but the Srimad Darshan he mentions. Thakur amader bolechilen, তোদের কিচ্ছু করতে হবে না, শুধু এখানকার চিন্তা কর। Just think of me, you don't have to do anything else. এখানকার যা চিন্তা করে, পৈতৃক সম্পত্তি যেভাবে পুত্র পুত্রী পায়, সেরকম আমার সমস্ত আধ্যাত্মিক সম্পত্তির উত্তরাধিকার সূত্রে পাবে। Anybody thinking of me will inherit my wealth even as a son or a daughter inherits the father's wealth. Master adds, তাদের সম্পত্তি কি জানো? জ্ঞান ভক্তি বিবেক বৈরাগ্য শান্তি সুখ প্রেম ও সমাধি. All of us are inheritors of this great spiritual wealth of Ramakrishna. Only you should prove that you are successors to it, for which you need a succession certificate to prove that you are his sons and daughters. Do you know where that succession certificate is? When we filled up the form, I want to take Diksha from Ramakrishna Math, the Guru has signed it there, and that is the form which we keep in our heart. Shiver dolil shil mohare rekhechi hruday khule, ebar nalish korbo nather khore. Ramprasad says, Dikri labu ekshawale, I have kept that dolil, the document which you have signed, O mother, in my heart. If you do not grant me the wisdom and the bliss which you have promised me, I will go to the court of Mahanatha, Shiva, and then take an injunction against you. If Sri Ramakrishna does not fulfill his promise, we will go to the court of Holy Mother Sharada Devi, and Vivekananda will be our lawyer, because he came as a barrister, and he will fight the case for us. And as Primeshanji says, Ramakrishna Puta Ganga Brahmanande Shagare Dhai. The great holy Ganges of Ramakrishna is flowing through Brahmananda. All that we need to do is just to float on it. You don't need to swim also. Haste haste, bhaste bhaste, amra Brahmananda Shagare jabo. Smilingly and happily will be float to the current of Ramakrishna and reach the ultimate in this very life. Be certain about it. And Swami Vivekananda says, believe this, Vishwashva. Shraddhasva, Tata Shraddhasva, as Ashtavakra told Janaka. Thank you.